Welcome to the Deep Dive. This is the place where we cut through the noise to give you that essential, high-impact knowledge you need to be well-informed. Today, we are really getting into one of the biggest organizational headaches of the last decade, Agile Transformations. And if you've ever looked at a company, a smart company, and wondered why they've got all the tools and the jargon, but they still aren't actually agile, well, you're in exactly the right place.
We've spent a lot of time with the source materials on this, and the core idea we have to start with is this massive fundamental confusion, the confusion between just adopting an agile process, doing Scrum or Kanban,
Right.
and actually executing a true agile transformation. It's the classic difference between buying a gym membership and, actually changing your entire lifestyle.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of organizations, they get really good at installing the process, but they just don't touch the underlying DNA of how the business actually operates. And one of the sources frames this so well. It says this isn't a binary switch. It's a dedicated multi-year capability maturity journey. So our mission today is to use this 5-level maturity framework to really map out that journey for you. We're going to pinpoint the specific shifts in behavior, in leadership, and even in organizational structure that have to happen so you can move beyond what's often called agile theater, that sort of superficial compliance, and get to real, lasting business agility.
Okay, let's unpack that. Let's start at the beginning, where everybody starts. Level 1, foundational agile. This is the rollout of the basic frameworks, right? Scrum, Kanban, whatever flavor you pick.
Yep.
Cross-functional teams, backlogs, daily stand-ups, retrospectives, all the building blocks.
And this, right here, is where the first big trap is set. Organizations get completely fixated on compliance. They just want to check the box. Did we do the stand-up? Did the sprint close on time? They focus so much on the ritual that they completely miss the underlying intent of Agile, which is all about rapid feedback loops and, continuous adaptation.
So we're talking about the whole Scrum butt thing, right? We do Scrum, but our product owner is really just a business analyst with a new title.
Exactly.
Or we do retrospectives, but nothing ever changes because leadership isn't even in the room.
Precisely. And the end result of being stuck in level 1 is just organizational exhaustion and zero real business impact. But the sources, they highlight a mistake that's actually worse. Something organizations do when they realize level 1 isn't working, and that's premature scaling. They start looking for a silver bullet, so they grab one of these huge scaled frameworks like SAFe or LESS before their team-level agile is even remotely stable or understood.
Oh, wow.
They think the fix for immature teams is to just layer this immense organizational complexity right on top of them.
And when you put complexity on top of instability, you don't just move slowly. You're actively creating chaos. You're trying to coordinate, 100 immature teams who can't even coordinate amongst themselves yet?
You got it.
Yeah.
Which brings us right to level 2. If level 1 is learning the rules of the game, level 2 is that essential and often really painful step of admitting where your organization is already breaking all those rules.
Level 2 is gap identification. And you said this is maybe the most crucial step of all because the frameworks, as they're written, they assume this almost mythical environment.
Perfect world, yeah.
A clean slate, no dependencies, totally autonomous teams. But nobody actually works in that world.
And that's the truth organizations have to confront. Level 2 means you have to stop pretending you live in a textbook. You have to map your actual non-agile realities. And what's fascinating is how detailed this mapping has to be. It can't just be, a list of complaints. You have to identify specific systemic points of friction. Think about things like regulatory and compliance requirements that force you into these rigid documentation steps. Or think about the annual budgeting cycle that forces teams to commit to projects 18 months out. That just kills agility by definition.
And the technical baggage, too. We're not just talking about process here. We're talking heavy, interdependent legacy systems, massive technical debt, and, of course, the waterfall dependencies that are still driving huge parts of the business. The sources really hit on how architectural decisions often stay centralized, even when the teams are supposedly cross-functional. But here's the pushback I always hear from leaders on this. Doesn't mapping every single dependency, every constraint, just lead to analysis paralysis? How do you get through this gap identification stage without just, documenting your misery for 2 years?
That is an excellent point. And the successful organizations, according to what we've seen, they recognize that level 2 isn't just about documentation. It's about intervention design. You map the gaps not to complain about them, but to understand exactly where your operating model needs to be adapted. So for instance, if your big constraint is that annual funding cycle, you map it, and then you immediately start designing a pilot for, say, fluid, outcome-based funding. You're designing an operating model that is tailored to your real environment, acknowledging the friction you can't just wish away. And that honesty, that's the turning point for the whole thing.
That reframes the whole exercise. It's not misery, it's self-awareness leading to a targeted design. Okay, so once we have that map of our real-world constraints, we move to level 3. Process integration. This sounds like where we start building bridges between those agile teams and the rest of the company.
Precisely. Level 3 is all about achieving what the sources call a coherent flow. And that's a powerful idea. It means you're creating a delivery system where the entire value chain, the whole thing, works together smoothly. It's not about forcing the legal or finance departments to do a daily scrum. It's about designing the handoffs so their necessary non-agile work gets absorbed efficiently into the pipeline.
Can you give me a quick, concrete example of what coherent flow actually looks like? Because that can feel a bit abstract.
Absolutely. So imagine a scenario where every new feature needs, I don't know, 3 layers of legal and security review. And in the old system, that takes 4 weeks. A level 3 organization doesn't just complain, they integrate. They might create specialized compliance liaisons who are embedded in the agile teams. Or maybe they dedicate a small, fast response legal review team that acts as a shared service, getting that sign-off done inside the 2-week sprint, not after it. The whole point is to make the entire system resilient to the constraints you found back in level 2. And the sources really stress using pilot initiatives at this stage. You never, ever try to scale something this complex universally from day one. You test the new integrated workflow in a controlled way. You find the friction points. You refine the model. You keep the transformation itself iterative.
That makes the transformation feel less like some top-down mandate and more like an engineering problem. You iterate on the transformation itself, just like you iterate on the product. Okay, so once that integrated model is proven, we hit level 4, scaling and institutionalization. And this is where it gets really interesting, because now we're talking about corporate structures. This is not just copying what one successful team did.
That is the key distinction. If level 3 solved the workflow problem, level 4 is about solving the governance and power structure problem. At this stage, Agile has to stop being just a delivery method for IT. It has to become the entire organization's operating system. This is the non-negotiable step. And it requires embedding Agile thinking right at the top of the company, starting with funding. You have to move away from that traditional model of funding specific fixed scope projects and move to fluid funding for value streams.
Okay, let's pause right there. Value streams is a critical term, but it's often so poorly defined. For the listener looking for that one key takeaway, what's the real practical difference between project funding and value stream funding?
Think of it this way. Project funding is like going to the store and buying exactly 50 pounds of flour, 30 pounds of sugar, and 10 pounds of butter. You're optimizing for the cost and delivery of specific ingredients. Value stream funding is funding the entire bakery that produces and sells cakes. You're funding the permanent end-to-end delivery of customer value, regardless of how the ingredient mix changes.
And why is that so important?
Because project funding, by its very nature, forces you to define all the requirements upfront and stick to a rigid schedule. It's inherently waterfall. Value stream funding lets leadership adjust priorities on the fly without having to stop everything and reapprove a brand new project budget every time the market shifts. It literally builds flexibility into your financial structure.
And that shows exactly why this is so hard. It directly threatens the traditional power of leaders who control those annual project budgets. And it goes beyond funding, doesn't it? You mentioned HR and performance reviews.
Oh, absolutely. If you fail to change your HR system at level 4, you've pretty much sabotaged the entire transformation before it starts. If your performance reviews are still rewarding individual heroes or local optimization.
Like rewarding a developer for closing the most tickets, even if they ignored a teammate who needed help on a critical feature.
Yes, exactly. You destroy any hope of cross-functional collaboration. Institutionalization demands that your performance evaluations, your promotion criteria, even how you design your office space, it all has to align with Agile principles. It has to reward teamwork, system-level thinking, collective outcomes. The sources are crystal clear on this. If you haven't changed how you budget or how you promote, you haven't transformed. You've just made your dev teams busier and a lot more frustrated.
That's the punchline of failing at level 4, isn't it? Local optimization at the expense of enterprise effectiveness. The system is still set up to reward the old behaviors, no matter what you say in the stand-up. So this brings us to the final destination, level 5. Continuous improvement. This is where true agility really lives. If level 4 was about setting up the operating system, what defines an organization that's actually operating at this level of maturity?
At level 5, the organization sees improvement not as some scheduled event like a quarterly review meeting. It's just a routine, continuous function of the business. It's a living learning system. The retrospectives, the adaptive processes, the learning loops, they go way beyond individual teams and right up into the highest levels of the enterprise. And what's really unique about level 5 is that the Agile process itself is always up for debate. They aren't religious about Scrum or as safe as they first implemented them. If a practice or a tool or even a governance structure stops adding value, they have the authority and the capability to review it, adapt it, or just throw it out. Their core competency is adaptation itself.
So they're not just responding to changes in the market, they are actively optimizing their own ability to respond. They're tuning the machine itself. What's the final tangible outcome for a business that actually reaches this level of maturity?
The outcome is resilience. It's a strategic advantage. True agility emerges as the ability to respond intelligently to change. They aren't just reacting blindly to shocks, internal or external. They use their fully integrated, funded, and institutionally supported system to navigate complexity with purpose. They're making decisions based on rapid feedback, not on multi-year speculation.
And that strategic evolutionary perspective, that's really the lasting impact we hope you take away from this deep dive. It's a complete shift in thinking.
So to synthesize the final actionable takeaways for you, the listener, organizations that really thrive, that get real business value from all this effort, they commit to 4 key actions on this journey. First, they commit to radical honesty back at level 2. They adapt practices to their real context instead of trying to force-fit some ideal framework. Second, they design for coherent flow at level 3, integrating Agile with the rest of their operating system so they can eliminate those friction points in the value chain. Third, and this is maybe the hardest, they scale deliberately, not mechanically. They make sure those big institutional changes to funding and HR actually happen at level 4. And finally, they operationalize learning at level 5. They commit completely to continuous introspection and improvement, making the process itself adaptive.
This deep dive has made it so clear. Implementation is just the starting line. True agility isn't about following a framework. It's about building an organization that's capable of changing with purpose, not just changing by mandate. So, the next time you're in a meeting and you hear someone talk about an agile transformation, use this framework. Ask yourself, ask your colleagues, are we just focused on level 1 compliance and superficial process, or are we structurally committed to level 4 institutionalization? That difference, that commitment to capability over compliance, is what separates the organizations that win from those that are just playing agile theater. And that question, it changes the entire conversation.